Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Peter Nelson and I'm a professor here at Berkeley, an assistant professor in environmental science policy and management, as well as jointly appointed in the Native Studies house within ethnic studies. So I just wanted to make an announcement to ask everyone to turn their cell phone off today, so that we don't have any interruptions. We have some really wonderful guests today, and I'm especially excited because I'm Coast Miwok and a tribal citizen of the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria, and today we have some relatives from our tribal area as well as out in the Sierras, and so I'll announce and introduce our guest speakers. But first, Fenosha, did you have any announcements that you wanted to make?
Bonjour, everyone. Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Zingarelli-Gallegos. I'm the program specialist here for the Native American Student Development and the NCC. Just want to welcome you all into this space. We're really lucky and really grateful to have Julia and Lucy Parker here with us today. We had a great FAFSA reading session with students earlier. Just wanted to let you guys know a couple of notes about the space. We will have a reception following the talk with tea and brownies, so please help yourselves afterwards. All of our cutlery, silverware, everything is compostable, so feel free to throw it in the green bin. We do have 2 bathrooms right here. They are non-gendered, so feel free to use whichever one you please. Say this one on the right side is bigger for accessibility needs. And yeah, just a little more about the space. We've been here for about 4 years now. We have MOU with the Graduate Assembly. It helped us to secure this space after, many decades of student activism. And of course, Kenosha has been a huge proponent of helping us secure this space. And yes, we're looking to extend that MOU so that we can, stay here in the space, but also looking to expand to another space that better fits the needs of our, Native and Indigenous community as we're growing rapidly, which is a great sign. I'd love to see this space filled up. Yeah. Yeah, if you need anything, if you have any questions throughout the program, I'm here. We also have our community stewards working, selling some of the Parker's beadwork and art, cash only, so you feel free to support them. And yeah, we have also our steward on desk, B, if you need anything from the desk. But otherwise, just enjoy the talk and the reception. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now that we have an introduction to the space, I wanted to say that I'm also the chair of the Joseph A. Myers Center for Research on Native American Issues. On behalf of the Myers Center, I also wanted to acknowledge that here at UC Berkeley, we're on the territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of Chochenyo Ohlone people. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has benefited and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. Consistent with the university's values of community, diversity, and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and our commitment to hold the university more accountable to the needs of American Indian and Indigenous peoples. On behalf of the Myers Center, I'd also like to thank our sponsors. And so in addition to the Myers Center, we have Native American Student Development. We're also pleased to collaborate with NESD on this event and a lot of other programming as well, in addition to this one. It's great to be able to hold this event at the Native Community Center. And I wanted to thank Fenosha Bowerly and other staff and students for all of their work making this event possible today. So in addition, there's a very special day and weekend. Today's event is part of Parents Weekend and Homecoming. And I'm curious just how many parents of current students we have in the room today. If you could raise your hands. So many, yeah. Thank you for all being here, yeah. Welcome. And then how many alums do we have in the crowd as well? Yeah, a lot of alums, and I am also an alum here too. Welcome back. Many of you, especially former graduate students, may know Carmen Foghorn as well. So Carmen, who is very dear to us, served as director of American Indian Graduate Program and created a sense of belonging and community here for so many students, including myself, as I said. So Carmen's here today, and we'll have a chance to catch up with her during the reception. But just, you know, lovely to see all the alums, all of the familiar faces and parents as well. And those of you who aren't parents or alums, you know, you're also welcome today too. So the Meyer Center hosts events like this to educate students and the public, and your financial support to the Meyer Center and for Native American student development makes this possible. We do have QR codes by the front desk if you would like to make a donation in the spirit of all this that's going on and supporting our programming. So today we're honored to be joined here by the Parker family, Julia, Lucy, and Quincy Parker. We have a real treat in store for you, a basketry weaving demo and talk. Then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A, questions and answers. And for those of you joining us via Zoom, please use the Q&A feature to write in your questions, and I'll ask those questions on your behalf. So finally, to introduce the speakers today. The Parkers who we have here represent 3 generations of renowned basket making, of this renowned basket making family. So we have Dr. Julia Parker, who has spent most of her years living and working in Yosemite Valley here in California, though she was born in her native home territory. And in addition to making baskets that have been featured in numerous museums, she has dedicated her life to teaching basketry. You'll learn more about her life in her memoir, Scrape the Willow Until It Sings. So you can look for that. The Parkers have also brought a few copies of books featuring their family's baskets for sale today, along with some of the baskets and beadwork that they have made. I also want to point out that above us here is a painting of Lucy Parker by Barbara Mumby. And Julia's daughter, Lucy Parker, is also a skilled basket maker with baskets in museums, including the National Museum of the American Indian, which I've been to and seen. It's lovely to see those things across the country. She lectures and demonstrates throughout California and the US. Her basketry is intricately connected to her environmental advocacy, and she is going to tell us more about that today. Lucy's son with us here is Quincy Parker, and he's carrying on the family's work as well with focus on feeding. Please join me in welcoming the Parkers.
Okay, in our way, when we say thank you, we say aho. Aho. So everybody just say aho. Aho. That means thank you in our way. So I just want to give thanks. We're in a new area here. We're in the mountains, and whenever we come in other indigenous areas, as the Ohlone people in this area, we like to ask permission to be here because we're all here together, tribes and stuff. But it's, you come and that's how you give respect to your neighbors and your family members. So I'd like to thank the tribe here and the land here of our people live here on the ocean. And that way we'll be welcome here and they'll let us talk today. So, but we always honor that. And I'd just like to thank the people here who sponsored in helping us to come here and to tell our story, because we have many, many stories of our tribes and our people in different areas here in California. And so our story, and there isn't a wrong story or a right story. It's a story of what you feel and how you were brought up in your ways. And, you know, sometimes we have to relearn all this. And so we've been a lot of relearning, and we have to come sometimes back to school and look in the archives of people who were interested in what we were doing, you know, 50 years ago. So now it's all coming to, you know, it's going to keep going with our young generation and our people that are wanting, and people, everyone wants to learn. They're curious. What do the Indians do here? Are you real Indian? I mean, those kind of questions we get asked a lot. And I'm Lucy Parker. I was born and raised in Yosemite National Park, and I'm Yosemite Miwok, Southern Sierra Miwok, Mono Lake Paiute, Kashaya Pomo, and Post Miwok on my mom's side. So I have a lot of tribes, and all the things I learned about my basketry, I've learned from my mother, Dr. Julia. I've been at her side since I was born, raised in the cradle board, and learned all these things. And there's so many, many ways and stories that you put these, as we call them, items, and they're all for use. You know, these are just not for show. We use these in our work and in cooking and carrying our babies. And I have 5 kids. My daughter Ursula, she's another generation basket maker. And then 4 boys, my youngest Quincy, and we're all helping. And they always wanted to, they were always around us, and so they had to kind of learn, you know, what to do. So we never said, you have to do this. So they were there. And then my mom with her people, now she's from the coast here, and she was in an Indian school over in Stewart, Nevada. And she was adopted and put in the Indian school there. And she didn't know where she came from. She didn't know who her people were until she went to Yosemite with my dad, who was the Miwok, and she finally found who her people were. And people from her tribe came to Yosemite. They heard about this Pomo woman making baskets in Yosemite National Park, and they came there and they found her. It was 2 prominent ladies, Mabel McKay and Essie Parrish, who were ladies from down here on the coast. They said, "This is your niece, Julia." So she found her people, and so now she's 95, and she's a member of the Grayton people up north here, and has lots of relatives. So, and my son Quincy, he's part of us, and there's a lot more of us at home, but everybody couldn't come. So, or my daughter Ursula and Naomi, the little. So there's 4 generations of the basket makers. But you know, it's, you know, where do you start with this? And I've grown up with this, and it gets the stories, you know, these are things that I've learned that have been put here by my ancestors who have done this from the beginning of time. And it gets very, you know, it's heavy on your heart. It's not sad, it's really happy, because like now we can still do this work because materials are still out there, and all you have to do is look around and you'll see them. And when you learn about these materials, when you're driving down the road, you go, oh, look, there's a willow over there, or there's plants, you can make something out of that because it's a container and it will carry things, your food. So we have a variety of baskets here and all the different styles. And in California, we were all hunters and gatherers. We didn't do any agriculture work. We were hunters and gatherers. We were always out gathering. And if you lived in the Sierra, you're gathering acorns and obsidian and salt and things like that. You lived on the coast, you would gather seaweed and salt and, you know, fish, different things like that. But there was a lot of trading that went on amongst these tribes. And so that's how we would get things from the ocean. They'd run them up to the Sierras. So we had clamshells up there, or they'd run the acorn down here, or the pine nuts from the east side. I mean, all this trading that went on, and there was a lot of trading with family and chiefs that married. One of my great grandpas had 4 wives, and so from those 4 wives, we had a lot of people, cousins and stuff. So, and I guess it was better to marry family members or sisters, because I guess you get along better. So that was kind of that. But anyway, growing up in Yosemite there, I would go to work with my mom, because back then they didn't have childcare or anything. So I'd go and I'd follow her to work in the museum, and we'd sit there, and she would be talking to the tourists that came in, and I would be sitting by her, and I couldn't do anything with the basket work because I'm a young child and my hands have to get coordinated and strong. So what I would do is I'd sit with our willows, and I brought some fresh willow right here, and I would just scrape the willow and make it real clean and make my sticks. And then she says, well, okay, now you got to go out and look at the plant. You got to tell me when this is a good time to pick it. So it was year. I mean, I'm still learning about all this. And so she said, you got to know what these plants look like. Are they you gonna make friends with them? Are they gonna talk to you? You gotta, they gotta talk to you and tell you it's okay. And you go in a good way and you do a little prayer, and then you begin to gather. And so all I did was just gather, and I learned how to work with the material. So some of the first baskets I started doing was this, what we call twine work. And this is really, it actually looks kind of simple, but it's actually very mathematical. Our people were scholars in doing this work, because they could make it even, they could balance it out, they could balance their designs and coiling. I mean, all these points like this were like highly skilled, and we don't know where it came from, but it was just within them. And the different fibers, we had the California redbud, which is for the red. This is only gathered during the winter months because it has to be dormant, sleeping, and then you gather in spring when the leaves come out. And then we have another fiber. This is called sedge roots. This is gathered in the sedge beds where there's sand, and you only can go in there a special time of the year because it's home of the rattlesnakes. Because the rattlesnakes, they lay into the sand. And one of my mom's teachers said that you can't go in there at a wrong time, because you might, if you're digging down in the sand, you could dig up a snake, because they apparently go into the ground. And some of the roots we would find would be squiggly. And she said, oh, that's where the snakes were running around in there. So, I mean, those little stories like that. But it was to, you had to learn the respect, and you're out there. And it's like, are you going to be out there for real? Are you just going to be here for show? You had to kind of, it was a way of learning. And if you could do that, then you could come back. But sometimes, they said, no, you got to go home. So, but anyway, there's just so many materials. This is the bracken fern root. This is a dark root that grows up in Yosemite. And we dig this during the spring. And this is used in the colors of the coiling, like this design here. This is one of my mom's first baskets, but this basket's mine now. She gave it to me. So, and I said, I'm going to finish it. She says, oh no, just leave it like that. And I said, okay. But this is one of her first ones, and she always would make stitches really, really small. I'm always like, I can't do that. I'm gonna make my stitches big. So, but anyway, that's some of the redbud there. And just, there's so many different shapes, baskets like this. This is coiling. This is what they call 3-stick, because you can see this is kind of a wave here. And this is like, when you coil this with 3-stick, it actually goes faster than a single rod, which is like this. And it's a foundation inside, which is probably willow, and then the threads are wrapped around. I have some in the water soaking. I'm going to show you how you do that. But I mean, all these little little tiny baskets, little tule baskets we made today. And then we really wanted to get fancy, so we made beaded baskets. Put beads in here instead of the clamshells, because when the settlers came over, they brought in glass beads for us. So the Indian people said, oh, I like that color. So they would put them in their beaded baskets and bead it, all these trade beads like that. And then this was a contemporary modern one. She put sequin on this. And this is actually, it was just a funny thing. But you know, we like to be, we're not always serious. So we like to be funny. And then she did another one here. And I said, I want to finish it. She says, no, leave it alone. I said, okay, I can't, I don't have material like that anyway. So, and then some little feather baskets. And these are the prize gifts of like the Pomo people and some of the Paiute people did a lot of feather baskets. And this is actually very difficult to do because you have to get all these feathers have to line up like how it's on the bird, you know, how it's all layered and stuff. And so they have to lay in there like that. If they're laying crooked, it doesn't work. So, but this takes a little time to do that. But we have, you know, just a whole variety. This one was contemporary. This is a string basket. Because back in the days when the settlers came in, they were bringing in metal. They were bringing in cast iron pans. They brought in safety pins. They brought in all these modern tools. And so the Indian people pick them up and they found cotton string. So they said, we're going to make a basket with cotton string. It's a lot easier than going out and gathering. So, you know, we adapted to those kind of styles. So there's all kinds. Tule basket, which is a real easy basket to put together. And then our winnowing tray. This is for acorn. When we're gathering acorn, we sift this in the acorn. And this is all California redbud. So keep in mind that most of these materials are fresh. You have to make them when they're freshly made, or else they won't work, or we have to put it back in water and stuff. But there's all kinds of little things like little seed beaters out of willow and bigger baskets. And we have one of my grandmother's oldest baskets. It's a big cooking basket, and that's where we cook the acorn out of. And it's made out of willow. And then we have one of my grandmother's oldest cradle boards. It's about 100 years old. And most of the relatives have been carried in that. And beaded baskets. This is what we call a Paiute beaded basket. You make the coil, then you bead around this. So just all kinds of things. And we never throw it away because it just takes too long. And then our soap root brush. This is used to clean, or use the acorn flour to scrape it off the sifting tray, or brush your hair with it. And if you brush your hair with it, your hair stays the same color. So, but anyway, it's just all kinds of stuff. I'll do a demo, but I'd like to see if my mom would like to say a few things about her work. And she's done her dog bane, and my son Quincy has been learning to do the dog bane, and it's an art to do that. It's not many people are really learning. It's a little difficult. I haven't worked with it because I don't know, I'm not ready yet, I guess, but in time. So would you like to say a few words, Julia?
Thank you. I think Lucianne has learned very well. And my grandson is here too. And he's been learning about making string and gathering, like she said, a dog bane. And I have another granddaughter who wanted to come, but family kept her home. And so it's a story. I'm called Julia Flores Dominguez Pete Parker. And Parker came in from a name of a gentleman that I met at Indian school. My education has been about 6 years of public school training orphaned at an early age, put in a foster home, an orphanage, and then we came what called War to the Court, and they said, what are we gonna do with these 5 little Indian kids here? And this lady stood up and she said, I'll take those 5 little Indian kids. And she was a registered nurse. And so when I was younger, I always wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a doctor. And so anyway, she took care of us, and then she called me one day and she said, Julia, I can't take care of you anymore. I said, where are we gonna go? She said, well, we found this Indian boarding school in Nevada, Stewart, Nevada. And she said, they're gonna go there. And I said, I'm not gonna go by myself, am I? And she looked at me and I said, no, I'm not leaving my 2 little sisters and 2 little brothers. Where they go, where I go, they go. And so they put us on a train and we traveled by train. And then the superintendent of the Indian boarding school was there to greet us and put us in the car and drove us down from Reno down to Carson City and then on out to the school. Now the school there housed, I think, about 350 Indian kids, students, and they were from all different tribes. And so I said, what are we going to be doing here? And she said, well, we're going to put you in a kitchen. It was a vocational training school. And so I worked in the kitchen, washing pots and pans, and then I worked in a bakery, learned how to make bread in a new way, and then traveled on to making other things, working mostly in people's homes and servicing them. And then I graduated from the school, and my good friend was my husband's cousin. I didn't know that my future husband, was going to be her cousin. And she said, well, she said, I'm going to go to Yosemite. And I said, can I go with you? She said, sure. So the Indian people there, the board there, they had a bus that bused all of the Indian kids from Stewart, Nevada, all the way to Sacramento. And then from there, we were on our own. And so, of course, we hopped the bus and got down to Merced. And then I said, where's the people? Where's your mother and grandmother? And she said, oh, they're sitting in a car. And then the car was sitting over there. And then the people in the car saw us, and the doors flew open. And there wasn't no grandma, no grandpa. It was just all males, uncles and cousins. And so they said, we're going to go on up to Yosemite. And so that Yosemite is such a beautiful place. It's just like here. I love the water, and I feel the breeze come in, and it just refreshes you. And so remember, every place you go, there's beauty there. And so anyway, going into the Indian village in Yosemite, I was housed by my husband's grandmother, Lucy Tellis, who was a great basket maker. And you can see her big basket in the museum. And one day the superintendent gave me a call, and she said, I'd like to talk to you, Julia. And I said, all right. So I went on into her office, and she said to me, you know, we have work for you to do. And I said, what is that? And she said, well, we're going to have a museum, and we're going to display all the baskets that were made in Yosemite. And she said, we'd like to have you sit in there and tell people, visitors, as they come in, how the baskets are made and what goes into the baskets. And so I said, well, you know, I don't like to talk. And I remember going to school, public school in Santa Rosa, and I just hated to get up and talk. And the school teacher said, you must have something to say. And I said, well, I thought to myself, oh, I can memorize. So I memorized the poem Trees. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, so intimately lives with rain. Oh, to rain, but fools like me, but only God can make the tree. And so that's what I would say to the residents every time they came in. And there, I was living in this beautiful valley with all these big tall trees around. And so as I lived in the Indian village there, I watched my husband's grandmother boil acorns, turn boiled acorn into mush by gathering the acorns, and I saw acorns here, and I remember you don't pick those acorns, they belong to the people there. So I looked at the acorn and I said, thank you. And anyway, the story goes on and on. But the main thing that when I think about these beautiful baskets that we see here, that each and every one of you have a talent for something, and that it's no matter what you do, no matter where you are come from, you know, you're a happy people. And I got this little note from my granddaughter, and she said, Grandma, I think I've learned the way. She said, I'm happy that who I am, and I'm happy that I learned the stories from you. And so I think maybe it's time for me to quit talking, which I couldn't do in the beginning, and but answering questions. So when I sat in the museum, are you a real Indian? Well, yes, I am a real Indian. So I met the Queen Elizabeth there in the museum, and she heard about the story that the student told me, was that he was traveling around through her country and he saw this little basket and he wanted to know where it came from. And I said, it's made by a lady named Julia Parker, and she works and lives in Yosemite. And so the student came and he saw me, and I said, my basket got clear over there? And he said, yes, I saw it sitting on a little pedestal. And he said, you know what? He said, when you're happy with what you're doing, he says, that will travel around to people. And so I think maybe I'd better zip up. And so I earned my honorary doctorate at Fresno State. And I wanted to be, when I was young, I wanted to be a nurse and a doctor like my husband, my grandmother. And so anyway, the lady that taught me about being a doctor was, she said, you just be yourself. She said, and you can learn. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 75 or 80, 90 years. I'm 95, and so I think I've learned a lot of things. So with that, I'm going to say not goodbye, but see you later, alligator. The end.
I learned some more stuff. But anyway, you know, focusing more on our basket work, what we've done now, since a lot of our elders are gone, you a lot of our old people are basket makers in every tribe. They've all passed on, but they've left all of this for all of us to learn, our own people and people of, your different families. I mean, like I said, it's curiosity, it's education now to, now people want to listen to us. A long time ago, no one wanted to listen. Oh, don't do your Indians, don't sing those songs, you'll get, hit for that, or, they would scold you and then you'd feel bad, well, I'm not going to talk then, but anyway, I never used to talk either. And then I learned, okay, I'm going to talk. But anyway, what we do now is we do a lot of teaching, and we go around. We get called to go back, back east. We've been down the Smithsonian, and we go into the archives. And I go into the back archives where everything is hidden, and you just would not believe the basketry in representing California tribes that are in our vaults, and it's just amazing. You go in there, and when you start opening up all the cabinets, because I always want to see every tribe in California, it's just like you open up the cabinet, and what I feel is that they're happy. They're going, oh, someone's finally coming to visit me, because that's what I feel about our basketry, because they're alive. They're not talking, but they change the different seasons, winter, spring, summer, and they tell you this is time to gather. So they talk to you, you got to make friends. And one of the friends I haven't made quite with is with the California redbud. The California redbud's a little bit tough. So we always felt, my mom and I were talking about, well, what do you think? Are these plants female or male? And then she said, I think they're male because they're tough. So we, it's just working with them, and I'll get that redbud one of these days. But it's, there's just a lot of whittling at the strings and the splitting and preparing. And once you have enough material, then you can sit down, get them in water, get them soft. Then you can start working with these materials. And there's different sizes. Like my mom would say, don't make, when you're going to make a coil basket like this, she said, you don't want too long of strings, because every time you pull the string through, wood it's going to burn. Okay. So she said, you want to make sure that the strings are not too long, because you're going to wear and tear that string out. So I learned that. And then the little short ones will be used for the color. So you can put 2 stitches in here and make a little point, and certain way you can make points in these coil baskets, certain other stitches you can't. You can make squares. And it's to make your design. It's got to be even. Mine's kind of crooked still, but I'm learning. And then the different styles of how to put this coil basket together. It's just amazing of what tribe, what they were making. There was a lot of knot starts that I investigated. I had a magnifying glass. I was looking at the starts, and I go, how did they get the start? And I looked at the other Paiute style baskets like this. This has a clock spring coil, so it makes a little hole in the middle. And then they added the 3 sticks to make it, kind of 3D like. And then there's also a bunch grass, where you make a bundle, tie a knot, a square knot. There's all these different stitches, and you got to know how to put your needle in. I always go more to the left, and when I go to the left, I can't get points. And she always tells me I always do that same straight stitch. She can tell my basket work. So I'm working on, I've been doing this since I was little, and it's ongoing all the time. If there isn't a day that goes by, I am not working with these materials, because I feel like they want me. They want me to learn, and sometimes there's not enough time to do this, because we're coming and traveling and talking about baskets. But anyway, that's our teachers, the archives, and I've been here to the Berkeley archives here, and there's just a vaults full of feather baskets and just all these different baskets aren't being made anymore. But what's happened is at the museums, there are old ways of preserving back in the old days, and I learned this from the Smithsonian, that their preserving was putting on mercury and putting on arsenic and to preserve, especially feather baskets, because the feathers get these little bugs and they'll start eating the feathers. And so when you go into the archives, any feather work, capes, headdresses, they're all poisoned with mercury. So you have to wear gloves and a mask because it's still alive. So nowadays, I believe their methods have changed. I think what they do now is they freeze material. And when I was going to go to the Smithsonian, I said, well, I want to pick a basket that I want to do a reproduction, because we do a lot of reproductions. So they said, well, bring your material and we'll freeze it before you get here. And that way I can sit in the museum and make, try to make another basket like they did. But it's not impossible. It just takes time. And in our materials, like I said earlier, they're getting poisoned too, because they're getting pesticides that are airborne. It doesn't take good care of the earth, and the little animals are walking around, and then the plants are poisonous, and you can't tell if there's a pesticide or herbicide on these plants. And so when you go to put the materials in your mouth, you can get sick. And we've had some elders that happened too. So we have to be very careful. And I learned that with willow. I live on the eastern side of the Sierras, June Lake, Mammoth area, and they have the red willow there. And I learned that I was looking at the willow, and there was these little bugs that were climbing on the willows. And I said, well, if those bugs are eating that willow, it doesn't have a pesticide on it. So that's how I knew. So I said, okay, these are good to go with. So, and right now is the time to get willow, because the leaves are dropping off and the leaves will go to sleep. And then the plant will go to sleep. And then we make these strings. And this is the willow string that we make. We get out of, I'm going to demonstrate how to split it 3 ways, and anybody wants to try, you can. But this is what we get out of the willow. And this is the strings. This will go back into water, and then you can either twine with this or coil. So two different ways to do this. And but it takes a lot of material. I mean, it's just, I think a friend of mine who does baskets, he said it took him like 1,000 sets of willow sticks or something just to put together a small basket. So what happens to me, I end up running out of material. So I'm ended up only making, little small baskets like that. But this takes a lot longer than a big basket. So more time. And, but, we, try to keep learning, and this is, our people are gone now. So the baskets in the museum are our teachers now. And sometimes we can't get in there because there's rules and regulations, so you can't go in there because of certain this and that, and we're trying to hopefully change that, because we should be able to walk right in, and you're here, you're welcome, let's go, but we hope it changes, because there's just some, it's just really emotional, because you see them there, and they're just like these women and men too. The men made the baskets too. They made the big work baskets like this, they fishing traps, and they made the clamshell beads, they did all that. We were always not working, but just doing our weights. It's not work, or everyone says, well, you need patience. And I go, no, I don't need patience for this. This is my desire. I love this, because that's what I learned from my mom. Just be quiet and work with your materials. And so now I understand that. I never asked too many questions. And if you did, you get the willow slapped on your hand or something. So, okay, I'm going to listen. But that's the way you learn, by watching. And that's what I've done. And I'm still watching. So, and, but most of like growing up in Yosemite, my great grandmother, Lucy Talos, and all her sisters, their work was, they took care of the families in the villages, and they didn't have jobs like we do, go to work 8 to 5. They stayed, they were at home, cooked food for the family, the boys went off to work. They would stay home and they would make these baskets. And at the turn of the century in Yosemite, they used to have the Indian field days. And so what they would do is all the ladies and the sisters all get together making these baskets year after year. And they go to these sales, and then the collectors were coming in and they saw the value and they looked at this basket. Oh my God, this is beautiful. Look at the design. And they began to buy them. And then they were selling them for like $20, $10. I mean, something really, really cheap, as you would call. But these were just exquisite pieces. And they're still around, like a lot of Yosemite. But there was a whole line of these ladies who lived on the east side, Mono Lake, Yosemite, down here, the Pomo, everyone. There's just a line of these beautiful baskets. But it just takes time to get there. And like I said, the material is being poisoned, and you don't know. We try to work with the Forest Service, Park Service, and so that they can get educated on that. Hey, we need this area. Please don't spray it. And in my area on the east side, they do what they call mulching. They go along the side roads and they just cut it. And actually, that makes it better because it comes right back up next year. It's good. So, but those are some of the the hurdles and stuff. But we jump over them. I think we can still jump. So, but I'm going to do a little demonstrating on try to show you how to split a willow in 3 ways. And so right now is the time to split the willow. And this is red willow. And we also have what we call a gray willow. There's all kinds of willows you can use. This is gray willow. This is actually from Yosemite. And we have to get permission to go out there because tourists will see us and they said there's some people out there and they're wrecking up the land and stuff. But we're not wrecking, we're actually making it better. So but everything is used, nothing gets thrown away. And sometimes when I was first learning my basketry, I didn't like it, so I threw it down and my mom picked it up and finished it for me. She says, don't throw that away, it's a good basket. So, but I just think to my mom, I've learned everything, from her and various other teachers in California. And it's, it's not sad. I mean, they're not here with us, but look what they left us here, and we can still do this if you have the desire and you want to get down that hill and get dirty and dig up the roads, and it's just very environmental work that we caretake and I like. It's just like being a gardener. Like you guys, you probably have a garden at home or tend to something, and what do you give it? Love and care, water, talk to it, and then they all will be good to you. So, okay, I'll demonstrate the splitting of the willow. I'm going to split willow. I'm going to split the willow in 3.
Okay. You're going to split the willow in 3 ways.
The tools, I forgot to talk about the tools, and the important tools are our bone awls. These are from the legs of the deer, and our hunters. We need our deer hunters to go out and get the deer. For rattles and the skin for clothing, and we don't have too many hunters. Any hunters in here? Deer hunters, quail hunters, or because we use a lot of the feathers. But this is the best tool because it's natural. So when you're going to put it in to a basket, this is a tooly one we work on. You're going to put it in to a stitch, and so this is clean, okay, because it's natural. If you use metal has a lot of stuff on it, and it discolors it. So I rather, that's a nice point, but I'd rather use the bone off to make it just more cleaner. And then we're particular about our water too. Like I know here we have chlorine in our water, and what that does, it changes the colors of the materials. It will make it get really funny. And so when I'm at home, we go and gather a lot of spring water that comes right off the mountains. It's so good to drink. So, and it just keeps it,
you know, nice. It doesn't change the color. So this is a little Thule one that we worked on this morning. The kids all made, they all got their little basket. This is Thule. So this was gathered in the spring. It'll grow. It's a rush. It grows all around the creeks and the lakes, feet in the water, and it's green during the summer. And then you go gather. And this has been laying out in the sun all summer, and so it's canny now. Got a can. And as long as they're kept dry, they'll stay forever. These plants don't go away. And if you throw the basket on the floor, it's not going to break either. But this is our willow, and we have different sizes. So we go through and we get all the same size on the width, not the length, but the width. So you want everything even when you're putting these big twine baskets together. Because if you don't, it's going to be warpy and lopsided, and I don't like to have my basket look like that. So the more thicker ones, let's see, like this one. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah. But we'll take the willow, and we'll use these scissors. These are from the painting shop down the way. So you just have to cut it in the middle. And usually in the old way, they would use an obsidian knife. You get obsidian from the volcano area. Where I live, on the east side, Mono Lake, it's all volcanic. So you can go out and get obsidian. So you just split it down, start it in two, like this. So this is the part, if this had pesticide on it, it'd be going in my mouth. And then that would, you know, you would get sick from that. So you got to make sure that's not like that. So get the other side down. And let's see if it's going to work for me. And there's a little, in the middle of this plant, there's a little, you can, later you can come look at it. There's a little water line that's in here. So you follow that line down and it should split. It's pretty good. Let's see if I can do this. The one goes in the mouth. And then you pull. And you can hear it talking to you because it's making a noise, cracking. And then this is where you get your strings. And then this is used for the foundation, so you save that back in water. And then this little coat inside has to come out. It's a real thick pit, so it has to get filled out. So you fill this out. And what you do is you're thinning it. You want to make this so thin it's like curls like ribbon, because you want it to lay. You don't want to get elbows. It's too stiff. You fill that out, and then this piece gets saved because we're going to do a recycle basket with that. And then this part will get coiled up, and it'll dry for about 6 months. And then when you get ready to use this, you take a cloth when it's dry, and you run your fingers through, and that skin pops off. And then you get the white material. So like when later on we'll gather more, but you got to be careful about gathering too much because you can't get to it all, and you don't want this to dry. But we usually put the feet in water, and then it stays real pliable. And then during the winter, where I live, I get lots of snow, so I throw it in the snow and it freezes. So coming during the springtime, then it's still pliable. So snow, you gotta work with the elements. I get a lot of snow where I live. So that's one way that you put that together, and then the coil. Do you have any of the bucket on that side?
What is
It's right on the end of the table. So if anybody wants to try this. So I'm always the type of reader where I work on twine, and then I go to my coil, and then I go twine, and then I'm going like, I don't know. Okay, so this is one way of coiling. So see, I have a too long, my mom
gonna scold me and say, that's too long, Lucy. But I don't wanna have to keep adding, so. But I have 3 little, willow sticks coming out of here. And my start here was a knot start, so that's how you identify. When you go in there, when I go in, I look at baskets, looking at the starts, looking at the rims, looking at the materials, looking at the stitches, you know, and that identifies, you know, if it's a Paiute basket, Homo basket, Maidu basket, you know, we all, you know, did coiling and twining, but there's all different ways and materials to use, wherever area you were. So, but this is said, and what I did with this, I gathered this, dug it up, let it sit for a little while, then you gotta clean it and split it, and then you let it dry in, you know, for another year or whatever. I mean, these materials will last. Like I think I have some red bud that a friend of mine gave me from, it was in somebody's home or something, and they had passed away. And it had Lucy Pellis on it, who was my grandmother. And so they gave it to me. They go, Lucy, this is your grandma's material. I still have it. So one of these days I'm going to put it in a special basket. So, and then this stitch here, what I'm doing, and you can look at some of the other quotes. This is what we call a gap stitch. Okay, because it's leaning over this way, makes this design. The Miwok people in our area did this kind of stitch. So this would probably be made into a gambling or sifter like this. It'd make a tray like this, keep it flat. Or I could make a bowl, depending on what I'm gonna work on. So with the awl now, you put it into stitch, and you always gotta look, make sure it's coming out in the right way. And you leave it there. And then you grab this, make little points, so you have a little needle here. And then you leave that in there, pull it out, and put that through. Make sure it's on the right side, because there's a right side and a wrong side. And there's a sky side and earth side, and we can tell if you're putting the material in there backwards. So if you're putting the earth in first, which a lot of times weavers will do that, they go, you put it in backwards, take it out. So it's very, you want to learn, you gotta learn that. So I'll coil around this, and then this runs out, and you add another one, and maybe I'll add a color. Maybe I'll get red button and add that into my color. So that's simple coiling. Other coiling is I'm going into this to the left, right. The other one is straight under, other one to the left, and you get different stitches. So it's very technical, very, I don't know, physics, whatever you are, people were very highly skilled in that kind of work. And if you see some of the baskets, you know, in the museums, they don't see the designs, you know, and flawless. It's just like, there's no mistake in this. But my mom always marks hers with a little red bead, so if you find a basket in the thrift store or on eBay, got a little bead on that. So, but we find I've found her stuff on there too. I don't know how I'm gonna get it, but anyway, you know, today basketry, it's, you know, we're artists now, and we're carriers of the tradition, and we still carry the old ways. We know those rules, and we don't go by those rules. These baskets, it's not going to work for us. And so that is pretty much a short story. I mean, there's so much more stories, so much more learning, and I'm learning all about this. And sometimes I got to relearn because you know, I'm kind of a perfectionist. I want my work to look like my grandma's work, my mom's work, and there was a show that was done on my mom. How long ago was that? In the Walnut Creek? 2004. Yeah, 2004, and it had all of my mom's, Deborah, our friend, put together the show. It had all my mom's baskets, and everybody goes, "Did you see all your mom's baskets?" And I said, "No, I was a baby when she was making them." But there was just so many, and that's all in my collection. She gave them all to me. So. But I'm going to share them with my daughter too, and my sons. So, but that's, you know, a little bit of story. with that coiling and then the twining. We brought all this from the mountains. So this is another way, this is twine work. And you can do, some of the baskets are what they call window pane open. This one's gonna be a closed one, so it's twining, it's real simple. One gets wrapped over, one goes around. Fast way to put a basket together. I could make one probably in about an hour or so, if you time it, but I don't. I just make it. And you gotta be, with this style too, you gotta make sure that you're getting all these little spokes the same size as when you're the weaver. And then you always don't worry about the length, because if you have a short one here, you can always add another one. And then the thing about these twines, I looked at a lot of them, and I was looking at the rims, and oh my God, there's all these rims, and some of them look like braids. These rims are just absolutely beautiful, and I was going, man, I really want to learn how to make it. So I experimented, and so some of my rims are kind of like the ones in the museum. So the right way or good way. So, and then you just, certain ways to add, and you just slide it in, and then just keep continuing. Keep going. And the thing about this, you have to learn how to shape it, because if you bring it up too fast, it'll make it square, but you want to kind of have it round. And I started with 6 as a base. So you can start with 10, you start with 12, and that way you don't have to have a lot of slopes and stuff. So, okay. Okay, I think we have some questions now. Is that long enough?
Yeah, definitely. All right, so now we have time for questions for the Parkers. So, and one thing I did want to clarify, was the painting actually Julia, or was it you, Lucy? The painting here?
Oh, that's Julia.
Oh, it's Julia. Okay, so my mistake when I was introducing the family. So this is Julia Parker, who's pictured in the painting. But there are no questions on Zoom yet, so I'd open up questions from the room if anyone has questions. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. People who spoke to you. And as Zingarelli-Gallegos, I'm a researcher about basket in Japan. And I talked to a lot of basket makers in Japan. And it always comes up in the conversation these days that you have to get material because of a lot of reasons. And the climate change, like we don't have around that we can use freely. And a lot of people, local people, forget what the material can be used. And it got me think what I can do for these things. For example, as a local resident, how can I talk to the local here maybe National Forest Service, Forest Service, what we can do as what we can contribute that people who take care of the land. Does it make sense?
Which is about the Forest Service.
Yeah, maybe just elaborate a little bit. Are you asking about what researchers can contribute? Or
researchers or other local residents. Whenever I go to the interviewing and talking to their basket makers, I always kind of frustrated because I came here and listening them, and I have to eat sometimes. So what I can do for people making basket, taking care of the land. It might be really
yeah. What can people do who are local residents, if I'm understanding correctly, to contribute or help the situation that you were describing with basket weavers going out with maybe like environmental impacts or issues with agencies or other ways that there could be advocacy from local people to help out.
Okay, yeah, that's really good because, nowadays we're really, involved with our environment and what's happening and a lot of things that have been created and things that are causing, these changes in our environment. And, it's just the land, and when I look up in Yosemite, I look at the rocks and up in the Sierra, I look here, the environment, this ground here is still here and it was here before time, and so what has happened, we want to go in and reinvent, we want to make things more modern. And so this is what the hurdles we face with is that get rid of this plant because that's no good for nothing, and so we try to advocate that, this is part of our heritage and, you're going to be hurting a lot of other things that live in the rocks and the ground and stuff. So we always ask people to, if they are involved with agencies, like to just give them, maybe give them a little education and just say, look, we go to the agencies and talk to them about it. We said, like, we don't want you to go in and groom these plants, but there's only, in my area, there's, a handful of people who are caring, and so it's a little hard because a lot of people don't understand, but, as for the public, they want to help us, is just, you can start by, talking with, if you're going to some gatherings or something, talk to people and advocate, because it's important. And this, basket weaving was always told it's a dying art. It's not dying at all. It hasn't. It's just been, no one's been interested. How do you cook in a basket? How do you boil acorn mush in a basket? Do you put it over the fire? All these things. And we still know how to do all that. So, but just advocating and, like even in your own homes, doing environmental things around your home, if you're a gardener and you have plants and things like that, it's always helpful. So.
Well, I take basket by myself, and I don't want to take so much time.
Thank you. Yeah, because we need. Yeah, we like all the speaking about it, and we're helping ourselves and doing, helping ourselves by just creating this and doing our work, and but I want to make sure it's good material. I don't want to, pick up a willow and get sick from it or something. So we're working with people.
Yeah, so related to that, working with people, and this other question, Roxy Cruz from online asked if you could guide the priorities of Native scientists and non-Native land managers in Sierras, what would you want them to focus on? How could they take action in different ways that would be productive for you, in their studies or things like that?
That's a good question too. For myself, I feel that, advocating, with folks like that is like back in the old days, in the old traditions, there was a lot of cultural, what they call cultural burning out. And in our area up in Yosemite, our people burned the whole meadow because that brought back all of our basket materials, and it made room for the oak trees, the black oak, because the oak trees need sunlight. And so if they're covered over with overgrowth of pine trees and cedars and stuff, they're not going to produce. And so there was a lot of that going on in different areas all over in the Sierras. There was birds like that, but they were, they weren't out of hand or anything. But that really helped our environment, and I think that it's happening today. That there's groups of people going in and doing burns, and then you come back the next year, everything's back again, brand new, and I've watched some areas that we had some fires at. There were natural fires, but I went back and all was willow and everything was all growing really good. And I was going, oh wow, this is really healthy, you know, for the land. So in that way, you know, it helps. And just, you know, people like to study, you know, what these plants are, what's in a willow stick, you know, what kind of, is there something in there you could use, you know, and I've always was told that willow you could use get aspirin out of it or something, you know, I mean, things like that, people who can do investigating on these plants. I mean, the sedges, you know, like the earth changes with the sedge when you go to dig underneath in the sand, always has to be in the sand. So you have to go dig there, and if there's any kind of poison there, that seeps down into that ground. Then so when you're digging that sedge root or the fern roots, you know, it's going to be there. And then I always think about our little friends around there, our little animals running around in there too. So it's just, you know, it's hard to maintain. You know, you can't save it all, but you know, save what you have and just keep moving forward. And you're doing a lot of things.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Yeah, no, I have a personal interest, professional interest in fire as well. And related to that question, do you see differences? I know you mentioned some of the differences between the quality of the material, you know, of things that have been burned or haven't been burned, you know, or even things that you see in, you know, the museums from a long time ago versus the material you're able to get out on the landscape today. And in lieu of burning, in addition to that, do you see anything, you know, different techniques that you can do instead of burning, or are there some things that really just need to be burned?
Yeah, well, yeah, in that way, this is the burnings now I believe has come back through education and, you know, looking back in the history. And, you know, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, when the ladies and the men were gathering these areas, they were possibly, you know, burned, but then just going in and, you know, harvesting the areas year after year after year. And then I've been in some areas over on the east side end where I live, Yosemite, and these are areas where my great grandmother would go gather her sedges and her willows and stuff. And you go there, there's just it's all filled up with the overgrowth. And so what we have to do is go down there and just cut everything down, you know, and help it that way and clear whatever else is growing around there and caretake it. And that's how we caretake. And then now, you know, we could do different fire sections that, you know, will, like I said, will help even better. And when I was teaching a lot of workshops at a friend, she lives up in Davis, and she's a biologist. She would come to my classes and she was like the first one out there just ready to just clear everything out. And she'd get right in there and chop down willows and stuff. And it really helped us because the next year we went back for the workshop, there was brand new willows there. So there's all kinds of stuff out there. Tea, you know, stinging nettle and all kinds of stuff, plants all over. And once you become aware of it, and some of you might even be plant people or, you know, biologists, or just someone just cares about the plant, and you'll start just looking out the car. And we carry our big scissors and our pruners in our car, and so when we see something, get out and go. We can't jump the fence, but we'll try to sneak under the fence. But I mean, you know, it's just like when I see the baskets in the museum, you know, those materials, they're old. I mean, they're probably 100 years old, a lot of those baskets, and they're untouched. They're not, the only thing they have on it now is pesticide from the museum. You know, before they were all natural, and there was so much more material there because there was a group of people in the centuries, you know, of these women going and men going and harvesting and caretaking and cutting year after year. And then you wait and you store all these materials, and then you have your materials for next year. Same with the acorn, like you go gather acorn. One year could be a good year, next year it's not going to be good because of our water and, you know, what's going on with, you know, we don't know, sometimes we're in droughts and, we're always looking for water. And so all these things aren't available. And so this year is a year for the good acorn up in Yosemite. We saw acorn out here. We were walking all over it. But I mean, just things, clearing it out. And I try to clear my areas out. And every year I go back where I gather, it's all really nice. And I can't get it all. That's all. I don't even make it in. So just, a lot of caretaking like that. And I think it's the most important, because once you get good materials for building houses, building your boats, you can put it all together. So, and the younger kids are doing a real good job in doing the burnings and caretaking for us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Question.
You've mentioned that you go and look at the historic archives of baskets to learn how your ancestors created them. Have you seen or experienced any developments as that knowledge gets passed on to the younger generations, or changes either in the form or the technique or the use of what kinds of baskets the newer generations are making?
Yeah, it changes because of we're contemporary now. We've got all these sources, we got tool items, nobody, the things like they're using, there was a lot of trading amongst the settlers when they came in. They brought in metal cast iron pans, they brought in safety pins, they brought all these things in that were really easy to use. And so, those things were being used, and instead of using a basket to hold water, you could use your cast iron pan to hold your water. And so, but the thing is that the baskets, I've seen some pretty old ones, and so now the younger generation is wanting to redo reproduction. They want to learn, and they want to do it in the right way, and they want to use the traditional tools. Like in one of the museums, I saw there was a whole tray of all these different tools, and it was just amazing to see, that and you can still get them. You just have to get out there and get them. So, but they're learning, and they're, everybody's on board with it. They're wanting to collect, gather, and the thing is there's a lot of rules that go along, and if you're not listening to those rules, the old people would say, no, you got to go home. And they weren't being mean, but that's if you really wanted to be there. And sharing of the water. One of my mom's teachers, Mabel McKay, she learned her pomo weaving from her. She would have a bowl of water for Julia sit right by her, and nobody could touch that water, because when you touch that water, you take the strength from that person. So she was real particular about that. And if you were kind of sick or not in a good way, she would say you got to go home and rest. And she was very strict. I didn't learn from her, but I met her, and I didn't say anything to her. But anyway, those are things like that. And the younger generation, they're really wanting to learn, and I see a lot of the young kids wanting to make put baskets together, gather, and do all their burnings. But it's the archive pieces are just one of a kind, and it's just the stitching is just amazing. It's like anybody crocheting or doing handwork like that. And even the headpieces of there's headpieces made of the dog bane, purses, dog bane. And, that's this skill here is not too many people are doing it, but I think my mom's probably one of the best ones putting the dog bane together. And then my son's learning.
Can you hold up the dog bane?
Oh, true. This is her dog bane bag that she made, and she scraped all the dog bane, got the string.
Starts out with
right here. Starts out. That's what the dog bane looks like. This grows up in Yosemite, and there's dog bane up north, but it's a little different color. It's more of a red color up in your way, Peter.
Yeah.
And then because of the soil, and see, the soil has a lot to do with these plants. That changes the colors and the strength on it. So if it's clean soil, it's gonna be good, so. But it's an art for this, and then this is some of the strings that my son got out of, the fibers that he got out. So this will all get rolled into rope. And so you have to have a lot of these to make a bag like this. And it takes, and she did what'd you do, a knotless netting on this? Knotless netting stitch?
Yeah, knotless netted looping, as we call it. And the only tool that I use is a bone needle. And I start at the top, and I looked at the old baskets and bags that were made. And so I put a book in here, and I sewed around a nice, made a nice string. And then I kept that book in there, and as the bag got bigger and bigger, then I was able to just use my hands. And then it's what they call knotless netted looping. There's no knots in there. And even if and when I got down to the bottom, I said, now how in the world am I gonna hook that together? Because I hadn't seen any. And so I figured, well, just sew the ends together. And so I was looking in one of the Indian books, and I saw a bag just like what I made. And I said, well, I guess maybe I got the right string, and I was doing the right knotless netted, what they call knotless netted looping, making belts. And you can see where we have to twist that string together. See, there each one is strung by itself, and then we make the one that's going to sew it together. It's much smaller, so that goes in between. So what you have to do is just sit and open up the coil, and then the string will go in there, like this right down here. You see, this a little bit hard to see, but you can just see how the string goes in there back and forth. And so when we get to the end, I have to finish it up. And so I'll just keep twining and twisting the string until they're almost all together. So I have at least 3 more rows lines to finish the belt. And we call it the end.
Cool, so I think we're approaching the end, but we still do have just time for a couple more questions in the back.
My name is Kim Pio-Pepwa. I'm from the Tuolumne Band in Miwok. I am a board member of the Zingarelli Land Trust. Also, I just wanted to say with the movement of Land Back and how that is going to help us to be able to find these materials, because when we're living in a time when land continues to be hoarded and destroyed. So, as a board member of the Land Trust, we're constantly getting, portions of land back here in the Bay Area. We recently got some land in Castro Valley and Livermore area and all over. So hopefully this can be a place where we can also start to grow some of these materials. When oftentimes where you want to go and forage for your baskets is private property. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, and thank you, Lucy. It's so good to see you and Miss Julia. You knew my grandmother for East Country Field Campo, who also was at Stewart as well.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to see you. And yes, that's, what is going on now with our tribes, our recognized tribes. My tribe in Yosemite, the Southern Sierra Miwok, are not recognized. And it's been working on for the last 30, 40 years. And one day we'll be able to, one day, but right now have a cultural agreement with the National Park Service to build and do our ceremonies. We have a roundhouse that's being built in one of the old villages where my dad and grandmother grew up and where I grew up and my brothers and sisters. And so we're hoping to have cultural guardians there. And, you know, this is what can happen when you get land. And I've even had students in our class, non-Indian people, on their land, they started growing sedge and soap root brushes and willows and everything. And it can be done. You know, you just have to be really careful about, you know, what kind of soil, the right kind of soil. You got to have water, because sometimes if you start transplanting things, like a friend of mine she lives over by Table Mountain near Fresno, and she's from the Duma tribe, and there was a whole bed of sedge there. And so somebody said, oh, we want to go and transplant that because we need it in our area. Well, they tried to do that and the soil didn't like that area, so it didn't happen. So, but you know, that's what you can do with, if anybody has any extra land, you can do that. So, and in our area, we don't have that. So, but we still have to go out into the woods and get down that hill and crawl back up, and that's part of it. And we're always gathering, and I love to gather and just do my baskets. Pretty much try to do it every day if I can. So, but thank you for that. But that's the best way to do now, is just with your land, just rebuild, and then you can have all those materials for your people coming up, the generations. Everybody wants to learn now. You know, it's not just us, the native people, but the non-Indian people, and we're helping. And thank you. And thank you for preserving our baskets in the museums, because we wouldn't have anything to look at. So we're always very thankful for that. And hopefully one day they'll come home. We can get them back, and there's a repatriation act where a tribe can come together and they could get their baskets back and their regalia. And it's happening, you know, because like I said, those pieces were made by our older generations. And so it's a piece to look at to try to reproduce. And it's not going to be traditional because we're going to be using metal awls and stuff like that. So, but you know, we try to get there. And is there any more questions? Or?
Well, we're actually out of time.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So yeah, we're actually out of time. I know there were a couple more questions, but maybe we can continue the conversation at the reception, which you're all welcome to. But you know, that's a great place to stop. And you know, thank you everyone for coming. Let's give, what's that? Okay, Liz, you want to say one more thing, and then we will thank them all for coming.
Yeah, I just want to say, Yahweh Kamalish, I'm happy. Thank you from the Post Miwok. And I just want to, you know, thank, you know, everyone here in this room, you're interested in it, you know, it helps yourself, your families, where you come from, because we all come from somewhere, we all have something to offer, you know, and, you know, for us, that we're very proud of what we have, and we're never hiding anything. It was always there, and everybody's learning and wants to keep, you know, wants to put things together. And it just, you know, for me, is you know, I have my mother by my side, and I have my children and my cousins who help, and it helps me keep going, you know. And I'm still learning. You know, I'm not a expert yet. I'm not a master yet, so I don't know when you get there, but I just want to say thank you, and it makes me feel very honored that I'm here. And you know, this whole, when we driving areas here, like this UC Berkeley wasn't even here. I mean, and you look at all the land of the people from the ocean here lived here, and we're probably sitting on the gathering areas here, you know, that they used. So you know, I always think about those kind of things. So, but we'll have fun, and good blessings to each and every one of you. And I hope you can just enjoy and be happy and smile. Yahweh.